arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Hello, Dhamma friends. I want to thank Venerable Ratna Siha for inviting me to share a Dhamma talk with all of you on this celebration of the Posan Poya, very important holiday in Sri Lanka. Now, most of you, of course, know what the Posan Poya is. There might be a few people listening who might not know. So I'm going to start with giving a short kind of history of how Buddhism came to Sri Lanka. So Posan Poya is celebrated in June, and it is said in the month of June in the 3rd century BC that the Arahant Mahinda had come to Sri Lanka on a mission to bring Buddhism to Sri Lanka. Now, before Arahant Mahinda had come to Sri Lanka, there had been no Buddhism in Sri Lanka. And most of the people following religions there were probably some Hindus, because some of the kings were married to Hindu women, and they learned some Hinduism from that. But many of the people were sort of nature worshippers. So they worshiped spirits and yakas that they believed lived in the rivers and lakes and the mountains and so on. So it was a primitive type of religion like that. And King Asoka, who was in India, Arahant Mahinda was the son of King Ashoka. And he had a sister named Sanghamitta, and they were both Arahants. But King Asoka was friends with the king of Sri Lanka at the time, whose name was Devanampiya Tissa. And so he wanted to honor his friend, King Asoka, by sending his son, who was an Arahant, to Sri Lanka to introduce Buddhism there. And so it is said that Arahant Mahinda came with a group of other monks who were all Arahants, and they had psychic power, and they came from India, it's said, by flying through the air. And he alighted on the top of a mountain in Mahintele. And at that time, the king was out on a hunting trip, hunting wild animals in the forest. The place was very jungly then, with lots of wild animals, so the king liked to hunt. And the king saw the monks there, and the monks saw the king, and the king stopped his hunting, and Arahant Mahinda beckoned to him and said, "Come." So this intrigued the king very much to see these Buddhist monks that he probably had never seen before. And so he came over to where the Arahant Mahinda was, and the Arahant Mahinda gave a Dhamma talk or a sermon to this king and his whoever was with the king at the time. And it is said that the sermon that he gave the king was the lesser discourse on the elephant footprint, which is a discourse from the Majjhima Nikaya that describes all the various qualities of the Buddha and all the marvelous aspects of the Dhamma teachings, like attaining the jhanas, formless jhanas, and attaining enlightenment. And the king, of course, had never heard anything like that before, and he said that he became converted. And so Arahant Mahinda stayed on in Sri Lanka. From that time, it is said it was, I think, 306 BC. he stayed for 50 years or 60 years until he died, spreading the Dhamma. And at that time, the king undertook to build monasteries throughout Sri Lanka, and the Buddhism became established there. And they had initially a group of 55 men became monks. And that's how the Sangha started in Sri Lanka. And basically it had been preserved that whole time through, of course, various changes in kings and so on. But so that's why down to this day, the Posan Poya is next to the Wesak Poya Day, which is the celebration we had last month of the Buddha's birth, enlightenment, and parinibbana. Posan Poya is the second important holiday. And the reason is before the Buddhism came to Sri Lanka, basically the wisdom of the teachings and religion was steeped in lots of rites and rituals, or just animistic beliefs, worshiping spirits and so on, or maybe some of the Hindu beliefs, but the common ordinary person probably couldn't even understand those teachings. Anyway, when the king was propagated the Buddhist teaching, and it has been preserved all this time down to the present day. And so it is similar. Actually, there's a kind of a connection that Buddhism, when Buddhism came to Sri Lanka, there was no Dharma, really no, let's say, Buddha Dharma, or the Eastern teachings. It was hardly non-existent before about 1960. And then slowly books and other things came. So in the same way, it took several hundreds of years for the Buddhism to gradually, get established in Sri Lanka. And now in this country, well, I'm in America, of course, but and from Sri Lanka, Buddhism has spread to European countries in part because of the missionary activities of so many Sri Lankan monks, Venerable Narada, Venerable Piyatissa, and so many others, Venerable Madhya Panyasiya, of course, who started the first Theravada temple right there in Washington, right there where this broadcast is coming from. Washington Buddhist Vihara was the first Theravada temple established here in America by Venerable Madhya Panyasiya, the Sri Lankan monk. So it's like what goes around comes around. So Buddhism was, established in Sri Lanka from India, and then the Sri Lankan monks have have traveled around the world, since aviation and so on, and have spread the Dhamma through the world and in this country. So the importance of that is that before that, people were basically, dominated by, beliefs that didn't always address the mind, and beliefs that, just by praying to spirits, making offerings to spirits, or believing in a certain supreme deity and obeying their commandments and so on, that somehow you could attain some kind of salvation or find happiness. But of course, the Buddhist teaching is a little bit different than that. Buddhist teaching was about how each person can, through developing the powers of their own mind, solve their own problems, the problems of existence, and especially the problems of suffering. So the Buddhist teaching is outlined in the Four Noble Truths about that suffering exists, what is the cause of that suffering, and that there can be a cessation of an end of suffering. That means if you remove the cause of suffering, then suffering can be eliminated. And then what is left when suffering is eliminated? Well, happiness. Because suffering is simply a dualistic pole. If there's suffering, then there's happiness. So suffering is the opposite condition of happiness. When suffering is eliminated, then the mind will become happy. Now, and then the way to live, think, and meditate that will bring suffering to an end. So the Buddha said that, every person, if they could understand the Dhamma and practice the Dhamma, that they could eliminate the causes of suffering and find true happiness, lasting happiness, or find liberation from the bonds of karmically created suffering. So, the teachings of the Dhamma are quite radical in terms of what was previously known or existed as religious practices before that. And, the Dhamma, actually, even though when you say Dhamma, we refer to the teachings of the Buddha, but the Dhamma really is about the laws of nature. And all of the Buddhist teachings are about the laws of nature that govern the operation of the mind and body in the world. And these follow certain laws of nature, just as the earth goes on, the sun rises and sets, and the seasons, and animals grow and die, and human beings are born and die. This is all part of the cycle of nature, and it follows certain laws. And especially, but the Buddha was interested in what causes suffering and how suffering can be eliminated. And the Buddha discovered that suffering basically is in the mind. And I want to talk briefly about these laws of nature, because this is one of the most important aspects of understanding and really appreciating the teachings of the Dhamma and the practice of the Dhamma. So the Buddha's teaching can be summed up in the first two verses of the Dhammapada, which the translations are: all actions are led by the mind. Mind is their master. Mind is their maker. If one acts or speaks with an impure state of mind, then suffering will follow, as the cart wheel follows the foot of the ox. And in the same way, if one acts or speaks with a pure state of mind, then happiness will follow, as your shadow follows you around. And there's one other important law of nature too, which is Newton's famous law of physics, that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And this also fits the law of karma very well. And the law of karma is similar to the law of gravity. If you throw something up, it comes down, because this is a law of physics. And when that object comes down, it can come down with a very hard thud. So in the throw something out of your mouth, it goes out into the atmosphere or environment and reaches other people's ears, causes a reaction in them, and then comes back to you as the opposite or equal reaction. And so if it was some words of anger or hatred or violence and so on, then an opposite or equal reaction can come back to you. And this is a natural law. It's not something the Buddha made up. And if you throw something out of your body, like, some negative body language or, hitting somebody or striking somebody with a weapon or some physical action, then the same thing, that will produce a reaction from the outside, that other person or from others, and then pain will come back to us. And even our thoughts are like kind of radio waves. And they go out into the environment, and if somebody and our mind is also like a receiver. Our mind is both like a radio transmitter and a receiver. So it puts out thoughts, and they can also be received back to us. So those thoughts will go out, be received by other people, even on an unconscious level, of course, and come back to us, affect us in one way or another. So these these laws of nature about the mind, how the mind operates in connection with the external world and even with our own world. So the Buddha had discovered this through the power of his meditation and also through the power of his remembering many past lives. He could see how all the things that he did, spoke, said, and thought about had their consequences, whether immediately in that particular life or coming back to have effects in the next life also. And so the Buddha could directly see that through his psychic power, the ability to remember his past lives, and also the ability to see the past lives of others and how others have been born and died according to their karmic actions. So this is, again, this is, you could say, almost a scientific kind of process. But this was what the Buddha was the most interested in, was the mind, that the source of suffering is there within the mind through because of ignorance, because of not knowing the truth about the law of karma. We've allowed our mind to accumulate all these forces of greed, hatred, and delusion, these impure states of mind, that then we are acting upon these out in the world all the time. And the effects come back to us as different types of suffering, as physical suffering, and people come looking for us to inflict their pain on us from having caused them some pain. And basically, most of our karma that we create is because we don't follow the 5 precepts. So the Buddha saw this also very clearly. The impure states of mind that the Buddha was talking about are the mind that's bent on causing physical harm or killing others, and then stealing things from others, intoxicating the mind, and using bad language, false speech, malicious speech, harsh speech, and sexual misconduct. There's other kinds of negative actions too, but most of the kind of negative actions, or akusala karma, unskillful karmic actions that are motivated by greed, hatred, and delusion, manifest in these 5 types of unskillful behaviors, that because of greed, hatred, and delusion, people, resort to physically harming or killing others, using all kinds of bad and negative speech, stealing things, intoxicating the mind, and this addiction to, sensual pleasure. And so that people will kill, lie, cheat, steal, pillage, and plunder in order to satisfy their sensual greed. And hatred arises because of attachment, because of greed. If somebody blocks our ability to satisfy our pleasure, like takes away our girlfriend or wife or whatever, steals something from us, is blocking our pleasure and causing us pain, then hatred arises. So actually, all of hatred arises because of attachment and greed. That's why in the Buddha's, in the first noble truth, Buddha said that the cause of suffering is greed. But what is the cause of greed? The cause of greed is not understanding the mind. The cause of greed is not understanding these basic laws of nature and living within those in harmony with the laws of nature. So that's the main thing, that most people are not living in harmony with that law of karma, because they're not doing the skillful actions, or they're constantly, perpetuating these negative thoughts, speech, and actions, which become strong habits. And these habits are also passed on from parents to children and through societies and so on. If those societies don't have a firm moral foundation. But even in countries where there are, most religions have a kind of, code of ethics. I don't want to mention any particular names of other religions, but I think most people know that. There's the 10 Commandments, and almost every religion has some sort of ethics. But it's hard to practice them because people don't have control over their mind. And that's why people break the precepts, is because they don't have control over their minds. Because their minds are difficult to control. And that's why the practice of the Dhamma, the cornerstone of the practice of the Dhamma, is the practice of meditation. Now, coming back to the Four Noble Truths, we mentioned, actually there's 3 levels of suffering. One is the physical level of suffering. That means these bodies are subject to the laws of nature. So when they're born, and when they reach a certain mid-age, they start decaying. And even before that, even as youth, they're susceptible to diseases, deformities, broken bones, sicknesses, and so on. And then, of course, there's aging, and then there's eventually death. And while we are undergoing these types of physical suffering, we're also going through mental suffering. That means pain, lamentation, grief, despair. Whenever we are sick, or our loved ones are sick, or they die, and we grieve because we don't want to lose them, especially if they died by being murdered or in some unfortunate accidents. And even young people die at a young age, so naturally people grieve. So that's the mental suffering. So actually the suffering the Buddha mentioned is 3 levels. That level of physical suffering, the mental suffering, and then there's the suffering of ignorance, just not knowing the truth, and being separated from the whole. which he mentioned directly, is the 5 aggregates of clinging. By not understanding the 5 aggregates, which is the basic ignorance and the truths of anicca and anatta, that is what I often will call spiritual suffering. That means not knowing the truth. You know, a person could be fairly healthy most of their life and maybe fairly well balanced in their mind, maybe don't have too many mental problems, but they would, unless they are enlightened, they would still suffer from not knowing the ultimate truth, not knowing that happiness of being connected with the present moment awareness, being in direct connection with that fountain of bliss, serenity, and bliss that is the deeper nature of the unconditioned consciousness. So most people know nothing about that. And even Western scientists don't know much about that. And I don't know about in the Buddha's day, but you know, in this modern age also, now Western science, even though Western science is put on a pedestal and everything, and they've invented and created a lot of good things, you know, the advances in medicine and being able to send spaceships to the moon and Mars and beyond, and all these incredible gadgets and inventions, the internet, of course, Zoom, all that. So, you know, that's controlling the external world. So actually the Western science, you know, they're interested in finding out the origin and the end of this physical earth and universe for the most part. So astronomers are trying to blow apart meteors to get stones and find out what kind of elements, the exact time of the birth of the solar system. They want to know exactly the day the solar system came into being. Or they're sending Voyager 4 spacecraft out, you know, into interstellar space and trying to find the end of the world. And you know, they're interested in manipulating the material world, which is all right, but they haven't given much importance to the mind. And actually, the Buddha was also interested in the beginning and the end of the world, but it was different. The Buddha was interested in the beginning and the end of the world of suffering. And there's a nice little story in the Buddhist text where one deva who could travel by psychic power, and he could run and, you know, like, and travel hundreds of miles in the space of a few minutes through his psychic power and his abilities. And one day he got up and said, I want to find the end of the world. So he started running. And he went to different sages or enlightened people at the time, or so-called enlightened people, and asking them, please, how do I get to the end of the world? They said, well, they scratched their head and they said, go ask the Buddha. And so finally they even went up to the Brahma realm and was asking the Maha-Brahma about how to find the end of the world, because Brahma was supposed to have created the world. And so this Deva went to the Maha-Brahma, and that's when the Brahma told him, well, you better go ask the Buddha. So then he came back and asked the Buddha, and the Buddha said that this Deva's name was Rohitisa. He says, Rohitisa, you're never going to find the end of the world by physically traveling. And then he said that the world, the arising of the world, the ceasing of the world, and the path leading to the ceasing of the world is right within this 5 or 6 foot long body with its nervous system, memory, consciousness, and so on. And basically what he meant by that was the end of suffering. So suffering has its origins within the mind, and it also ceases within the mind. It's not dependent on the external world. So that was, again, a revelation that the Buddha could actually, have understood that. But he understood it through the practice of meditation. So that's why, I also consider the Buddha as being one of the greatest scientists, really a true scientist. Because otherwise, why don't scientists try to find the origin of consciousness? Why don't they want to meditate? Because they're constricted by religious beliefs, thinking they shouldn't do that. Or they have other beliefs that don't allow them to be totally free to investigate the nature of consciousness. And the Buddha did that without microscopes and other scientific gadgets. He did it through tapping into the inherent powers within our mind itself, the powers of mindfulness, concentration, and ultimately the wisdom to clearly see the mind, and then to know, if you understand the causes of suffering, which is being bound by our negative actions, being caught in the web of karma, cause and effect. And then the Buddha gave us the way that we can reverse that process, that we can bring about the transformation of our thoughts, speech, and actions from negative actions to ones based on wisdom, loving kindness, and tap into those powers, develop the powers of mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. And learning how to live in harmony with the laws of nature to reach that state of contentment and happiness that's there within each person's mind. So this is really the blessing and the uniqueness of the teachings of the Buddha that he brought to humanity. And that was also, then it has been brought to this country. And now the practices of meditation are becoming very well known in this country. Many people are coming to learn meditation. But except within, let's say, Buddhist temples or other forms of meditation, most people, the popularization of mindfulness is seen as a kind of a medical aid only. It's not seen as a process to liberate the mind really from suffering. It's about how to just transform one's anger, or to lower your blood pressure, or at least learn how to not to live more peacefully within oneself. So the practice of meditation is practiced by many people with this goal in mind, is just to help overcome some of their neurosis, their stress. So they teach it as stress reduction, and all these things, of course, are good qualities. But the way the Buddha really taught meditation and the 4 foundations of mindfulness, it goes much deeper than that. And actually, the word meditation, of course, that's an English word. So usually bhavana is the word that's translated as meditation. And it's interesting to see this word meditation. The root of the English word meditation is M-E-D-I, which has the meaning of something being in the middle. So medicine also starts with M-E-D-I. And mediation also starts with M-E-D-I, means something being in the middle. So medicine acts as a bridge between health and sickness. So you take medicine in order to overcome a sickness and regain your health. And a mediator sits in the middle between two disputing parties to solve their differences. And meditation is the practice of keeping the mind in the middle. But in the middle of what? Well, in this case, it means to keep the mind in the middle between the past and the future, basically. So most people's minds are caught moving between the past and the future all the time. We remember something, we see something in the present moment, and we identify it from the past. Oh, that happened to me in the past, and then we project that into the future as how we're going to repeat that reaction in the future. And everything that we see, people, animals, food, we're remembering our experience with that from the past and allowing that to project to the future in terms of greed, wanting that object, or the fear of not wanting that object to come to us. And so most people's minds are basically locked into this push and pull between pleasure and pain, or between trying to get what we like, or that we think that we like, that means a pleasurable feeling, and trying to prevent painful feelings to come to us, or if they do come to us, struggling to get away from those painful feelings. And if you really check up in your own life and in others, you can see that, probably 90% or 95 or more percent, even of our own lives, is spent in this pursuit of trying to find some type of pleasurable feeling, some contentment, and then to avoiding getting in to have painful feelings coming to you. And it's because the mind, is caught in this by habits between the past and the future. It doesn't know what the present moment is. But so the middle between the past and the future, the middle is the present moment. It means the here and now. And of course, the average person knows nothing about what the here and now is. They think it's some kind of, oh yeah, I'm here and now. It's very superficial, their idea of being here and now. It goes much, much deeper. It's about the consciousness resting in the present moment. Now, because that is the natural vibration of our consciousness, is being at rest in the present moment. It's like the engine of a car. We put our gear shift into neutral gear, and we can rev up the engine. It'll make a lot of noise, even though wheels will spin around, but the car won't go anywhere because the gear's in neutral. So the same way with our mind, we can learn how to bring our mind to the present moment. That means by not grasping or reacting to things, not remembering the past or projecting the future about any things that are coming through our senses, by having a concentration object, we can eventually bring our mind to the present moment and experience that peace that comes from the present moment, because all suffering is due to thinking about the past and the future. All the guilt, worry, remorse, fear, agitation, obsessions, almost every kind of mental state, jealousy, envy, all of those things are connected in some way or another to remembering the past or the future. Because again, people have never been trained how to keep their mind in the present moment. Who's ever taught us that? No one. Even the doctor who gave us birth didn't teach us that. Our mothers and fathers didn't teach us that. Hardly anybody, unless you were born into a very deeply religious family or a meditator's family, they might try to teach their kids that. But anyway, I'm just saying this to try to give some idea about really what meditation is, because there's lots of types of meditation out there in the world. But all of them, at least the Buddhist forms of meditation, they take different ways, but they all come back to eventually allowing the mind to rest in the present moment. Because when the mind is grounded in the present moment, then it's not comparing or judging anything that's coming through the senses, and so the mind becomes at peace. So this is what the Buddha taught. And his practice of meditation centers on the body, because our body and breathing, the breathing in the body is the only connection we have, really, is the only access point we have to reaching the present moment. Because our mind is almost always continually going in the back and forth between the past and the future, or it goes to sleep. So in meditation, we learn how to stay awake, not to go to sleep, to stay awake, and also the senses, we can still hear and feel things, but the mind is not reacting to them. It's not going out and getting caught in all of the habitual reactions in the nervous system, reactions about trying to get away from pain or to obtain some pleasure. So developing the quality of equanimity. So the breathing in the body are the first stages of learning how to train the mind. So meditation, basically it's training the mind. We have this breathing in body with us all the time. And it's the only thing that's really in the present moment. Just, if you can just remember, and the basic definition of mindfulness is to remember, but specifically to remember the present moment. That means to remember what this body is doing right now. And if you're sitting down, if you could just focus on the body, feel the body in the sitting posture, and just continually remember that, even just for 5 minutes, without any intervening thoughts or without going to sleep, you would enter into a very deep state of present moment awareness, in a very concentrated state, in a very blissful state, just only by doing that. But the problem is, it's difficult to do because our mind is not trained. And then the same with the breathing. You've all heard about the anapanasati. That's one of the most popular of the Buddhist meditation techniques. So the same way, if you can just focus on the breathing, knowing when you're breathing in, knowing when you're breathing out, and not allowing the mind to get lost in thoughts or go to sleep, then the same thing, you would become concentrated in the present moment. The mind would stop thinking about the past and future, and you would experience this temporary freedom from suffering, a very peaceful and inner, peaceful, blissful state. And it's not that difficult to do, really. But there's the main obstacles for that. The main obstacles for people to meditate are the 5 hindrances, but there's some other hindrances too. I usually talk about, to keep it simple, 3 main hindrances. And the first hindrance is sleepiness. When you sit to meditate for some reason, after some minutes, because it might be boring, the mind will kind of start nodding out. So you have to prevent yourself from being nodding out, because meditation is a very awake, alert state of awareness. And so, sleepiness is caused by different things. Could be not getting enough rest, overeating, even thinking too much, or being physically working too hard. Of course, you get tired, and then you feel sleepy. So when you meditate, you try to avoid getting into those, developing those kind of conditions that give rise to sleepiness. And then if sleepiness doesn't get to you, then physical pain. After sitting for 10 or 15 minutes in one spot, then the physical pain in your knees, your back, your shoulders, or your neck, or in other places will start to arise, and people get disturbed by that. And so their mind is start thinking about the future. Oh, if I sit for 5 minutes longer, I'm going to get crippled, or I'm going to get this or that. I have to go to the doctor, and all these thoughts get triggered off in the mind because of the physical pain, and we just struggle to get away from it because we have a very low pain tolerance. But actually, a person can learn to tolerate quite a great deal of pain. Actually, the body can be able to tolerate and absorb a lot of pain if it wants to, but most people don't want to. So they're always trying to do things to avoid the slightest little pain by changing their posture all the time, or going to get some Tylenol or Aleve is the first type of sign of any pain arising. But most pains are not life-threatening, and they're not going to really hurt us, most of them. Some, of course, are, but many of them that arise in meditation will not be that way. And if there's not too much sleepiness or no pains, then the mind will be very active and will be continually getting lost in our thoughts. So what I call sleepiness, pain, physical pains, and the monkey mind, the mind with just jumping around, restless, always wondering what time is it, when it's going to be over, or thinking about guilt, worry, remorse, and fear, and restlessness. We're just used to relaxing. Most people in the day, if they relax, they either go to sleep or they want to go out and do something they consider relaxing, like playing some video games or going to shoot 9 rounds of golf, or so many things. But the average person cannot just sit down and stay awake and not do anything for very long. After a few minutes, they would start getting very, very restless. Or they say, what the heck am I doing? This is crazy nonsense. And get up and go. It's very difficult. And that's why many people find it very difficult to meditate. But if you can get beyond these, or at least start to challenge some of these hindrances, learn how to tolerate and sit through pain a little more without moving or without fearing it. And by doing some exercises, some deep breathing, they help to try to have a better flexibility and circulation, because the cause of pain in meditation comes from a lot of times the electrical energy in the body and the low intake of oxygen that the body's not getting. The circulation is very poor. And because of people's bodies are stiff, then they more easily develop pains like that. That's why things like doing yoga is also a good thing to do before meditating. Anyways, so these 3 hindrances are what the people deal with in meditation when they start to learn to meditate. And as part of this program, in the next section in a few minutes, I'm going to be giving a guided meditation in this way, learning how to just use the breathing in the body as a way to focus our attention on the present moment. Basically, the breathing body is like the anchor of a ship. Our mind is like a ship in a stormy sea. And, if the ship doesn't have an anchor, it'll be blown around here and there, and will be blown up onto the land, or it will capsize, or it will crash into other ships. So it has to have an anchor embedded in the floor of the lake or the sea. So the anchor for our mind is in the body or the breathing. So and the chain or the rope that connects the anchor to the floor of the sea is mindfulness. So that alert state of mind, mindfulness and being concentrated, is that what helps us to keep the attention grounded and focused in the body, which again means the present moment, and feeling the sensations in the present moment. And the longer you can keep your attention there, then you'll stop thinking about the external world, because you'll start to feel some pleasant sensations in the body. There are many pleasant sensations in the body too. And when the mind stops obsessing so much with its thoughts, the reason why you get lost in thoughts because you don't have an anchor. We've never been trained to use the body as an anchor. So, the body in some ways can be better than the breathing as that initial focus of concentration, but we use them in tandem because the breath is occurring within the body. And so any one of those is the starting point for developing that attention to the breathing body, which is the first foundation of mindfulness. Now, there's a lot more that can be said about the Dhamma, but basically I wanted this in this Dhamma talk, on this celebration of Posan. It's this method of meditation that was not known, not even by scientists. I mean, this is a very scientific process, but scientists don't even know about it. Maybe one or two recently because they heard about Buddhism, but it's a scientific process. It's amazing. In meditation is this. Scientists have to go into their laboratory and they have to look through microscopes and electron microscopes in order to see things, deeper. But the Buddha used his body as the laboratory. So in meditation, this body is the meditator's laboratory. And the focused attention, the mind, the mindfulness and concentration is like the microscope. And you sort of look down the microscope of focused awareness and focus that attention on your breathing or on parts of the body, sensations in the body, or the body in general, and start to examine and feel all the subtle sensations in the body, that the body is just comprised of many thousands and millions of sensations that are caused by cells, the interaction of cells and molecules and so on. So you can focus on that. It becomes very interesting. And then you gradually start to observe the impermanence, and then you start to see your mind more clearly. So when you're grounded in the body, when thoughts come up, because part of your attention is grounded in the body, when a thought goes through the mind, it's like it takes time. Part of the mind is still here in the body, and then you have a thought. So there's kind of a space there, and you can be aware, thinking. Okay, it's just a thought, never mind. Be able to let go of it. Detach from it. It's because you have that connection to the body is there. So there's a delayed reaction of the mind. So that is key for understanding how to not to get so lost in your thoughts so quickly, because people are not grounded and have that concentration on the breathing or the body, that anchor to the present moment. So that's why they get easily lost in their thoughts. So this is what I wanted to give you a kind of a guided meditation on learning how to do that. I mean, many of you have practiced meditation, but still we might ask to do a meditation as part of this program. And so I would like to see if there's any questions before we go on to the meditation. If anybody has a question that you want to ask over the chat, anything that I just talked about, you could, I think, unmute yourself and ask a question. I think, is that okay, Brahmaratna Siya, if people do that? I didn't see any chat questions. I forgot to mention that. But if anybody has a question they want to write in the chat, or just unmute your mic and ask a question.
Yes.
I might not be able to hear you, so please speak up louder. Something is that I'm not, the volume coming in from outside is not very loud.
Okay, I'm here, Bhante. So I can unmute the mic, so people can, if they want to ask any question, I can let them.
Okay, okay, unmute them temporarily. And if anybody wants to ask a question, sure. They can ask.
Yeah, sure. Allow participate on. Oh, now they can unmute themselves and ask questions.
Bhante is unmuted now, I hope.
Yeah, I already did, Bhante.
It looks like there's no questions. I'm going to take a short break right now for a few minutes. I'm going to come back. And if anybody has any questions, then you can think about them now or write them as a chat question. So I'm going to take a short break, a few minutes, okay? So I'm going to come back, and then if there's any questions, if there's no questions, we'll go on to practice our meditation, okay? So you can also, in this few minutes, you can stand up and stretch. You can write a question on the chat, or when I come back, you can ask a question, okay? So we'll come back in a few minutes. I'm going to turn off my video now for a few minutes, and I'll turn it back on when I come back, okay?
Participant.
I'm back online here. And, is anybody out there who wants to ask a question? Feel free to ask a question.
They can unmute themselves.
Yes, if you want to ask a question, you can unmute yourself. Okay, it doesn't look like there's any questions, so we can go ahead and start our meditation practice. So I want you to try to sit on your seat or on the floor where you are, and try to sit comfortably. If you can cross your legs or if you're sitting in a chair, it's okay. The main thing that's important is to try to keep your spine straight, the spinal column and the back of the head in a straight line. Meditation happens between the brain and the spinal column, because that's where all the sensory data from your body and even from your mind to a certain extent, it moves through the nervous system to the brain where we have the cognition. So it's important to keep the spine straight so the really straight. So try to sit straight, relax your shoulders. Just gently close your eyes. Imagine you're sitting in a laboratory. Just focus your attention down through the concentrated mind. Focus that inner gaze down to feel where your buttocks and feet press the floor underneath. Feel that solid contact of the buttocks and feet to the floor. Imagine you feel that 100 or more pounds of body pressing the seat. And try to feel your feet and toes. Turn up the power of the mental microscope. You should be able to feel some subtle sensation like the pulse of blood in your feet, your toes, where the toes touch together, where they press the floor. And just be aware of some sensation. Feeling those sensations keeps the mind alert. And just mentally remind yourself of sitting, of the basic mindfulness. This body is sitting here and now. So just keep remembering sitting as we're feeling the sitting posture. Now feel your hands and fingers, where they touch your legs or where they touch together. Feel the subtle sensations in your hands or fingers, and pulse of blood where they touch together. Feel the weight of the arms hanging from the shoulders. Relax the shoulders. Try to feel the sensations of the clothing touches the skin of your shoulders or arms. Be aware of both of them, both arms at the same time or one at a time. Being able to feel the sensations of awareness. Concentrated mindfulness. But anytime you have wandering thoughts, try to let go of those thoughts. Come back and stay focused in the body. Now feel your face. Move the attention up to your head. And feel your face. Feel or imagine, feel the skin stretched over the skull, the skin of the forehead, your eyes and nose. Feel any little prickling sensation on the face. And then feel your lips touching together. Focus on feeling the lips, the upper lip touching the lower lip. Might feel a sensation of dryness or moistness in the lip. These are subtle sensations. And feel the tongue laying in the mouth. Feel where the tongue may touch some teeth. Might feel the moist saliva around the tongue. Just remember sitting. And now feel your eyes in the socket. And just try to gaze on the eyeballs, the inner awareness of the eyeballs. The eyelids stretched over the eyeball. You feel the subtle eye movement. Subtle little eye movement. We call the REM, the rapid eye movement. Or the blood pulsing in the capillaries of the eye. Or eyelid. So we look in the external world with our fleshy eyes, but our mind is also like an eye. It's called the third eye, the eye of awareness. We can actually look and feel things in the body, feel the sensations in the body. We can move our attention anywhere we want to feel any part of the body that we want. if you have, of course, control of the mind. And now from that point behind the eyes, try to open up the lens of the awareness to feel the outline of the sitting body. You have the head there on top. You kind of move the attention down, feel the shoulders, the chest, the arms, hands and fingers. Feel the buttocks pressing the seat. Feel the way the knees are bent and the lower legs underneath, then the feet and toes. And try to feel those subtle sensations in the feet and toes. And start moving the attention back upwards. It's like panning a video camera out in nature. Moving back up to the body, feeling buttocks, hands, arms, shoulders, the head. And now try to feel settle the awareness behind the eyes again and try to feel the outline of the sitting body. That spot behind the eyes is kind of a natural concentration point, an awareness point. You can feel the silhouette, the outline of the body all in one glance. Maintaining that remembering of sitting, sinking the anchor of awareness deep into the body. Okay, now begin some deep, slow breathing. Deep, slow breathing helps you to concentrate on the breathing and also to oxygenate the blood. Get more oxygen into the system to be more alert. We try to take about 3 seconds just to breathe in, expanding your abdomen, rib cage, and upper chest. Hold the air in the lungs 2 or 3 seconds. Feel that pause and that nice expansion in the chest. And feel a relaxing contraction of the out breath. Try to feel the last bit of air going out of the lungs. And then the next in breath. Just take several more deep, slow breaths like that. Cultivating this basic awareness. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, sitting here and now. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, sitting here and now. Breathing in, feeling the whole body. Breathing out, feeling the whole body. Breathing in, relaxing the body and mind. Breathing out, relaxing the body and mind. Now we're going to count the breaths. I'm going to count them for you. Try to follow the counting to develop a more continuous concentration on the breathing. Try to continue deep, slow breathing if you can. With the next expanding in breath, until you count to 1. Feel that short pause. And the contracting out breath, also count to 1. Next in breath, 2. Out breath, 2. In breath, 3. Out breath, 2. In breath, 4. Out breath, 4. In breath, 5. Out breath, 5. In breath, 6. Out breath, 6. In breath, 7. Out breath, 7. In breath, 8. Out breath, 8. In breath, 9. Out breath, 9. In breath, 10. Out breath, 10. Now just continue the counting. Just continue any control of deeper breathing. Allow the breath to return to its shorter, uncontrolled rhythm, irregular rhythm. To continue to feel it. Keep the attention focused there on the movements of the abdomen, stomach, rib cage, your chest, subtler, shorter sensation. Feeling where the clothing rubs against the skin of the stomach, rib cage, your chest. That's what you actually feel the most. And just knowing when the breath is coming in and knowing when the breath is going out. You know it by feeling it. Again, be like the scientist sitting in the laboratory, looking down the microscope of focused awareness. Try to feel the 4 phases of each breath cycle. Expanding in breath and the brief pause. Contracting out breath in the brief pause. Noticing how each breath is different. Sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. Sometimes the in breath is longer than the out breath, or the out breath is longer than the in breath. The pauses in between the breaths are longer and shorter. The breathing process is self-regulated by our body and mind conditioning. Especially with each out breath, and feel the mind and body getting more and more centered and relaxed in the present moment. Feeling more and more sensation. You can use these brief mental notes to help you stay focused. Simply breathing in, sitting, breathing out, sitting. Just remembering that much. It's not much to remember. Breathing in, sitting, breathing out, sitting, breath by breath, moment by moment. Letting go of your thoughts. Let the thoughts come and go in the back of the mind. Keeping the breathing body, sensation of the breathing body in the front of the awareness. At the same time, be alert for any of those hindrances, feeling drowsy, pains arising, too many thoughts. overcoming those hindrances, straightening the posture. Turning back into the breathing body. Take a 2 or 3 deep, slow breaths. Anytime the mind has too many thoughts of feeling drowsy, you take a deep, slow breath or two, help refreshing the nervous system. Stay more grounded, awake in the body. You catch yourself totally lost in thoughts, recognize it as lost. Find the body sitting on the ground. Take a deep, slow breath. Bring the attention back into the body. Back to breathing in, sitting. And breathing out, sitting. Breath by breath, moment by moment. If you have too many thoughts and you want to count the breaths again from 1 to 10 on your own, you can also do that. If the mind is calm enough, Try to observe the continuous flow of different sensations. The in-breath comes and goes. The out-breath comes and goes. Other sensations around the body come and go. Sounds may come and go to the ears and the house. Thoughts come and go to the mind. The mind gets calm and centered in the body. You can notice anything simultaneously. If you don't cling to any sounds, thoughts, body sensations, remembering their past history, the mind can remain floating from moment to moment in the present moment, aware, riding each in and out breath into the stream of present moment awareness. Concentrated awareness. Breathing in, sitting. Breathing out, sitting. Sensations come and go. Sounds come and go. Perceptions, thoughts come and go. Pleasure and pain come and go. Urges come and go. Wanting. This is all just a continuous flow of karmic creating impermanence. The mental chaos. The flow of impermanence. in the space of present moment awareness. Present moment awareness is simply the mental space in which all the conditioned phenomena, sensory vibration, arise and vanish, come and go, triggering off the mind's reaction. That space of awareness is not affected by any of those pleasure and painful sensations, mental activity. What perceptions or thoughts arise in the mind based on the sound contact? Sambe sankara anichati yada panyaya pasati atani bindati dukhi Yesamango Visuddhi Dukkha Patta Chani Dukkha Bhaya Patta Chani Bhaya Ontu sabbi pipan. All conditioned things, the five aggregates of this body, mind, and world are impermanent. They arise only to pass away. When one sees this with the eye of wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with suffering. This is the path to purity, to freedom. May the suffering be free from suffering. May the fear struck be free from fear. May the grieving be free from grief. And this may all be with mindfulness and wisdom. And thus spoke the Buddha. Now let's spend the last couple of minutes of this meditation by cultivating thoughts of Maitri or Metta, friendliness, best wishes towards our own body and mind, and spreading that out to all others. So again, just try to focus your attention on the sitting body, and just inwardly gaze at your own body and mind, just knowing what your current life condition is, whether you're having difficulties, whatever good things are happening, things you want to work toward in your life, your Dhamma practice. But also just take a few deep, slow breaths. You take a deep breath, hold the breath in the lungs for a few seconds, try to feel that subtle life force energy of oxygenating blood, charging up the cell. On the out breath, feel that relaxing contraction of the out breath, last bit of air going out to the lungs. Doing deep, slow breathing is like sending metta to your own cells of your body, mind, nervous system. Charging them up with healing life force awareness. Just cultivating these thoughts to yourself. May I be well, peaceful and wise. May I be free from self-created pains and sufferings of body and mind, the unskillful thoughts, speech, and action. And have the patience, strength, mindfulness, and wisdom to meet and overcome all difficulties in life. And be able to continue to deepen my understanding of the Dhamma, the practice of meditation, to help free the mind from confusion and suffering. May I be well, peaceful, and wise. And continue taking some deep, slow breaths. And each out breath, imagine sending these thoughts wider afield, parents, family members, good friends, back home, where you live, people that you work with and see every day. And these waves of metta thought, the idea that we be well, peaceful, and wise, free from greed, hatred, fear, and ignorance. And we have the patience, strength, mindfulness, and wisdom to meet and overcome all difficulties in life. Begin with each out breath. Just imagine the waves of metta going further and further outward. Like radio waves emanating from a tower. Spreading out across the city, countryside, the whole state, eventually the whole country, across the ocean, eventually surrounding the whole earth. These thoughts of friendliness, best wishing. May all living beings, wherever they might be, living near or far away, weak or the strong, rich or the poor, may all living beings be well, peaceful, and wise, free from greed, hatred, fear, and ignorance, free from self-created pains and sufferings of body and mind due to the unskillful thought, speech, and action. May all beings of the patience, strength, mindfulness, and wisdom to meet and overcome all difficulties in life. May all beings be able to hear the mind-healing teachings of the Dhamma, to learn and practice meditation, to help free their minds from confusion and suffering. May all beings be able to live peacefully and harmoniously together, understanding the ultimate interconnectedness, interdependence of all things. May all beings be well, peaceful, and wise. May all beings be well, peaceful, and wise. It's like a mantra reverberating throughout space. Well, peaceful, and wise. Now I invite you to join in chanting the word sadhu 3 times slowly. We do the chanting on a long out breath. Try to feel those vibrations in your body and mind. If you want to hold the hands together at the chest, you can do that. Take a deep breath. Sadhu. 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 Now place your hands at the edge of your knees. Take one more deep, slow breath as you breathe in. Stretch your head back. Pull the hands against your knees. Arch your lower spine. Lift the head up on an in-breath, and the out-breath, press the chin to the top of the chest to stretch the neck vertebrae. Lift the chin up level to the floor on an in-breath. And relax on the out-breath. Put a smile on your face. Okay, friends. So this brings our afternoon session and this Poya Day celebration near an end. And I hope that you could get a little taste of meditation practice, especially a little taste of what present moment awareness is, and being connected to the body, this breathing body is a natural connection, easy connection to the present moment, really the only connection, reliable connection that we have. We've been carrying this body around with us 24/7, 365, you know, through thick and thin, but we've never bothered pausing to really, you know, get intimately connected with it, you know, from the meditative point of view, or using it as a natural anchor to the present moment. And it's always there, just inviting you to come and see. Like the Buddha said, ehipasiko, come and see, inviting to come and see. Just pause, bring your attention to the body, boom, present moment awareness. All the Four Noble Truths can crystallize in that moment, if you know how, of course. Okay, anyway, that's something, you know, you can hopefully work toward. Wish you all the best in your practice. Does anybody have any last questions? Or we still have a few minutes according to the schedule. If anybody wants to unmute their mic and ask any question about the meditation practice we just did. I see there's Shanta Srinivaratna there. Hello, Shanta. Haven't seen or talked to you in many, many, many years. Okay. Okay, friends, remember one last thing. Mindfulness a day keeps dukkha away. Okay? That's true. That's very true. Okay, friends, all the best. And you know, I'm still giving my next Sunday.
Yes.
I'm sorry if people couldn't hear me. Anyway, we'll see you again. All the best until then. Namo Buddhaya.